Welcome. We're very happy to have you here with us today. I'm Amy Klaus, Marketing Manager for Early Childhood Products at Brooks Publishing, and I'm very happy to have Dr. Tony Linder here with us today to talk about conducting TPBA assessments using video conferencing software like Zoom or GoToMeeting. The transdisciplinary play-based system is one of the most natural, easy-to-use assessment and intervention approaches for children birth to age 6. Trusted for more than 25 years, this popular, highly effective system helps you get accurate assessment results, develop customized play-based intervention plans, identify children's service needs, and evaluate child progress. To learn more about TPBA, if you're new to it, you can visit Brooks Publishing's website at www.brookspublishing.com. So before we start, there are a few tips for attending the webinar up on your screen. So if you have any audio problems, we recommend either dialing in if you're using computer audio, or if you were dialed in, try to use your computer audio. Usually that fixes most audio problems. Also, if you have any questions, you can type them into the GoToWebinar panel. On your right-hand side, there's a questions box, so you can type those in, and we'll take those at the end of the presentation. And also, I wanted to let everyone know that in the handouts section, we have a couple different handouts. We have a TPBA&I at a glance guide. There are slide handouts from today's presentation, and then there's also a very nice new online assessment document that Dr. Linder and her colleagues have prepared. So those are all great resources, and you can download them from the GoToWebinar panel onto your computer. So thanks again for being with us, and now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Tony Linder.
Hi, everybody. This is Tony Linder coming to you from Denver, Colorado, where it is snowing. And I have gotten a lot of requests from my colleagues about how to do play-based assessment online and whether they can do that with fidelity, and the answer to that is yes. I'm going to go through very quickly some of the steps that we put together. I have worked with my colleagues, Dr. Janine Coleman from the University of Denver and Dr. Christopher Miller from the Colorado Department of Education to put together some guidelines to help people make sure that they can keep to the integrity of the play-based assessment and still do this online system. So the first thing I would say is that you want to choose a format for your online system. Some people are using Zoom, some Skype, and I know there are other formats out there. So the first thing is to make sure that whichever your chosen format is, that your team is fully trained in it. And we will have the same roles that we traditionally have in a play assessment. There still will be a family facilitator and a play facilitator. And so you want to make sure that team, you have decided who's going to play those roles. The roles will change a little bit with the online system. And then the other thing you want to make sure that you do is to make sure that you do a training outline for parents. So these systems are sometimes a little tricky to figure out when you're first starting, and I think sometimes a little step-by-step guide for parents would be really helpful. Let's see, I'm trying to figure, oh, there it goes. Okay, so the typical, we're trying to keep as much as possible to the TPBA format that has been established and we know works. So we still want to gather preliminary information, and as you know, in the TPBA format, we do use a health history questionnaire, a routines rating form, and the All About Me, which is the perspective of the parent about what the child's doing. Brooks has been good enough to put these online in a fillable form now, so you will be able to access them for parents to complete. The other thing that changes during this particular online video format is that the play facilitator is now the parent. The team will still have a play facilitator, but that play facilitator is going to take a different role. The play facilitator on the team is now going to be coaching the parent as needed to try to see the things the team wants to see. We're going to talk about 3 different options for how you can do the play assessment, but you still do want to have the video. And if you recall, we've always recommended that you have a video of the assessment to review as a team. And I don't know about all of the online formats, but I do know that Zoom has a feature that you can upload the video so that you can view it later. We also always have a debriefing with the parent, so the parent leaves with a little bit of feedback about the session. And the other really critical piece is to have the team discussion, which can take place online. So I'm going to go through a couple of the things to keep in mind as you're doing this new format. The first is how to support families. This is putting families in a little bit different role than they've been in before. So instead of coming and watching us play and having them just participate a little bit in the play, they're now going to play a major role, and that's a big change. So we want to help them with this process so that they're not intimidated. So we have put together a letter explaining this process step by step, and we've also developed a form called You've Got This to help parents know that they can do this with whatever they have in the home, and that this is something that they do every day, and that should be something that's not any different than normal. So this is just a little section of the letter that we're sending. So we're going through step by step what's involved in the new process. We also are sending home the You've Got This form, which is the form which is really going to say, what have you got in your household that we might be able to use in the play session? So the parents will just be checking off what they have and sending that to the team. The next step is really to do a problem solving with the family. Again, this is online. So the team has received the You've Got This information. They've received the preliminary information. And so all this is going to come together to help put together an idea of what we want to look at, what are the kinds of things that the parent has that might be able to be put together in what we call play sets. So the play sets can include things from the kitchen, the bathroom, the bedroom, toys. They're just ideas that will help parents kind of get organized ahead of the play session, so they don't have to run around the house looking for what they have, to be able to see the things the team feels are important. And that can even be outdoor play or routines in different parts of the house, or just different routines in general. The team will also come up with the parents some suggestions, as I said, for those play sets and some things that they might be able to put together to make little play scenarios that will be easier for the parent to think about it in terms of things they can do, expansions they can do, etc. And then in terms of options, the first option is that the whole session is parent-facilitated play. And the parent may feel very comfortable with that if they play with their child a lot. So the parent facilitated play or family facilitated play would be using those play sets that have been suggested and problem solved together with the family to just do some little play actions. And these can be in short little segments, or they can be all together in some kind of a fluid play assessment. The second version is if parents feel uncomfortable with doing the play session, or the child won't perform. Sometimes as soon as they know they're being videotaped, they become very shy. So you can also have parents do some home videos throughout the day, which include both play and routines that the child may go through during the day. And then those home videos would be uploaded for the team to observe and look for specific types of skills. And the third option is a combination of 1 and 2. And the third option probably is a little bit of the best. It's just a matter of how much time the team has to look at both an online video in real time, and also to review the uploaded home videos. But those 3 options, I think, will give teams a lot of flexibility in how they work with individual families. And then the family facilitation piece. Now, this really makes a difference in terms of who's in the home. If there's only one adult in the home, then the family facilitator on the team will need to ask questions of the parent during the play, or have short play sessions and then take a break and kind of do some follow-up with how this relates to what they see at home, ask some follow-up questions, etc. If there are two adults in the home, if dad and mom are both home, or if grandma is also there, whoever, whatever adults are in the home, then one of those adults may want to be talking to a team member on the phone. So that person who is the parent facilitator on the team would continue to be in that parent facilitator role, but communicating with one of the family members by a phone while everyone is observing the play and asking questions in real time that are relating to what they are seeing. Now, in terms of play coaching, the play facilitator on the team now becomes the play coach. And you really only want to do the coaching when it's absolutely necessary. So you want to observe as much authentic interaction as you can. But there may be opportunities when a little bit of extension or adding something to the play might allow the team to see more. So the coach is to be a non-threatening coach. We don't want this to turn into a directive where we're telling the parent what to do and turning it into a test. What we want to do is just make suggestions that might enhance the play by saying things like, I wonder what would happen if we added a doll to your tea party. Things that will feel unobtrusive, but also give the parents some suggestions of how to expand the play. And then after the play session is over, we still want to do a debrief the same way that we do in a traditional TPBA. This is not to provide information about whether the child is eligible or anything like that. It is really just to provide some feedback to the parents so they know what the team is thinking. So we typically use a form that we take notes on and then provide to the parent, which talks about the relative strengths that we saw in the child, that talks about the next steps the child is ready for, and a couple of ideas that might be helpful to support the parent in their play interactions or interactions at home. This also is a good preparation for the parents when they go into the IEP or IFSP meeting, because they have a little bit of a foundation for what they will hear. And then a key piece of the play-based assessment is to make sure that the team has their team discussion, where you go over and compare what you saw. This is the transdisciplinary piece, where you compare what you saw in language and communication and social interaction, talk about how one area is influencing another, get input from each other about what skills you observed and where you saw the child, both on the observation guidelines for quality of performance and also on the age tables in terms of developmental level. So all of that can still take place online. And typically, I recommend that that might happen directly after the debriefing with the parent. So as the parent drops off of the online communication, the team can stay on and continue their discussion. Now, some teams may prefer to do that in a different session, which is fine, but I know everybody's under time constraints and trying to do lots of different assessments. So I think teams will have to figure out what works the best for them in terms of the fluidity of the process and also the time that's involved. So I think that the key thing here is to make the TPBA process as authentic as possible. We want this to be fun. We want it to be fun for the child and fun for the parent. You have to be flexible, as in any TPBA. How you do that, as you can see, we put together lots of different options for how you can do it. And I think another important factor is to make sure that we trust the family can do this. There's no reason why they can't, and that we can trust the evidence that we get, because it is an authentic look at how the child and family function in their home and how they play and interact together. So now I'm going to turn this back over to Amy so she can talk about what they've done for you online, and then we'll come back to asking questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony. I am going to show all of our listeners today how they can access the fillable family forms that Tony mentioned. So if you have used other Brooks products recently, you'll know that we're providing our online forms and any faculty materials like PowerPoints that faculty members may be using in our download hub. So if you go to the brookspublishing.com website, there is a download hub button here. So you can click the download hub. And if you're a current user, you can log in. If you're a new user, you can do free registration. You just need to pick your username, email, and password. So I'm going to log in to the system, and this download hub is a collection of companion materials for all of the products and books that Brooks Publishing publishes. So you'll see a whole bunch of different resources here. So to find the TPBA materials, you can just type TPBA into the search results, click search, and it'll pop up here. And if you want to save it for your files, you can put a little star here so it's easier to access. So you'll see that included in this download hub, there is a TPBA online guidance document. This is the same document that's included in your webinar panel section, handout section. So if you don't want to download it there, you can get it from this, this download hub. This is a 20-page document about how to use TPBA, and the forms that Tony was showing during her presentation are included at the end. So if I jump back to the download hub, and these are the 3 fillable family forms. So this is how you'll get access to those forms. You can click them. So you'll see this is the Child and Family History Questionnaire. So you just want to download the file, and then you can save it to your computer, and you'll see these are fillable fields. Save the master to your computer, and then you can email it to the family. And then when they send it back, you can just save it in a way that's meets your organization's security and privacy standards. So this is how you access the form. And if you have any questions on how to do the download hub process, feel free to type them into the chat box. And I'll quickly do a check right now to see if there's any questions about these forms specifically. Okay, I had one request to repeat it. So I can definitely do that. So you would go to the Brooks Publishing website. So that's BROOKES publishing.com. There is a download hub button. And this link will also be provided in your follow-up email tomorrow. So you'll get a direct link to here. And then you just create your account. So I'm logged in already. And then you just search for TPBA. And also while you're here, you could search for all early childhood books to see what resources are available. Some of these resources, you need specific codes that come with the book, but many of the resources are open and available for anyone to access. But you would just type in TPBA, it pops up, and then you can just, there's accordions, you can click these arrows to download the files. And so you could come back to this and log in every time you wanted to download the file, or you can just download the file to your computer and use it from your computer. Whatever works best for you. And you're welcome to share information about these forms on the download hub with your colleagues. These are open and accessible to anyone who would like to use them. Let me go back to the questionnaire. See. We have a question about asking whether we can make one of the forms that are included in the guide fillable, the You've Got This form fillable. So we'll take a look at that. I think we might be able to make that form fillable as well. If that's okay with you, Tony.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's a good suggestion.
Yes, and some of those other forms I think would be pretty easy to make those fillable too. So we'll take a look at that after the presentation. I think, let's see, we're getting some questions about whether this chat is being recorded. Yes, it is being recorded. So tomorrow, anyone listening right now will receive a follow-up email that has a link to the recording. And also, if you have colleagues that maybe registered but didn't get to attend, they'll also receive a link tomorrow. Let's see. So we are getting questions, are the fillable forms available in Spanish? No, they are not available in Spanish. Let's see. So now, Tony, we're getting some general questions about TPBA. So I'll ask, well, actually, before we go to our questions, let's go back to the PowerPoint and we'll finish. We have a few more, a little bit more information to share, and then we'll take the questions. So Tony, I'm going to give the control back to you. You'll share your screen again. Okay. So we just wanted to let everyone know that there will be more coffee chats, so you're welcome to join more. We're also giving away one free set to a listener. So after the webinar, you will be emailed, and we'll send you a free set as a thank you for joining us. And we're also giving a 20% discount. I think, Tony, it might be there we go. This code is Coffee Talk, so you can save 20% on any resources you'd like to order at brookspublishing.com. And then we also we created a resource page of COVID-19 resources related to early childhood that you may find helpful. So I think that's at the last, yep. So there's a bit.ly up on your screen now. So if you're interested in some more webinars and downloadable resources to help during this time, please check out that link. And then I think that's the end, and then we'll take questions. So Tony, we have a question of, okay, how long do you recommend the online version of TPBA take? So this online administration, what's your recommended length?
We're recommending that you try to keep it from 45 minutes to an hour. And again, it depends on what kind you're doing in terms of the options. Let's see, can you go back to can I get out of here?
Yep.
There we
go.
Okay. Okay, so I'm recommending that, again, depending on which option you choose to do, certainly if you chose option 3, which is a combination of both, then you would have less time in observing the child and family with the whole team observing the family in real time. So I think that it makes a difference, but I think that probably 45 minutes to an hour with little breaks in between the play so you can talk to the parent a little bit would probably be enough to get what you need to have.
Okay, thank you. Another question, do you know of any organizations or programs that were using online administration prior to this situation?
With TPBA, no. I know that we have done it in training with some of the rural areas, but I don't know offhand, and there may be some, particularly in rural areas, who are doing it, but I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, thank you. This is kind of more of just a question broadly about evaluation. Do you recommend that, well, this listener was commenting that parents are really struggling right now, and she's wondering, would we not just focus on reviewing records for eligibility and maybe conducting a more thorough evaluation in the fall, especially the clientele she works with are lower socioeconomic status and often don't have toys. So what are your thoughts on, I guess, moving forward with the assessment or kind of waiting until the fall?
I think that we have to move forward, and I think that's the guidance of the government as well, that we're not supposed to put parents and children on hold. And that's one of the reasons we developed the You've Got This checklist, because we can use whatever is in the home. And that's where the team comes in to help the parent problem solve in terms of how you can play. It's a really nice opportunity to help parents learn that the stuff they have in the kitchen, the pots and pans and muffin tins and whatever, are things that they can use to play with their child, and that those are good play materials in addition to toys, that they don't have to have fancy things with bells and whistles. So I think this is an opportunity for us to stretch ourselves, as well as for the parents to learn that they have more resources than they know that they do.
Thank you. We have two listeners asking about how would you incorporate interpreters into these online assessments?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Well, one of the things that you can do with these is, as you have been showing, is using the chat room. So it seems like it might be possible for somebody, for a translator who was observing, to perhaps do some translation through the chat room so that the other team members can see what's being said by the parent and the child. I'm not sure how that would work, but it seems to me like that chat room might be the way to communicate some of, certainly not a word by word translation, but perhaps some kind of at least a shortcut version of what's going on and what's being said. But I think that's going to be a piece that we have to experiment with.
Thank you.
We're all learning as we go forward.
Yes, across everything, right? There's a couple requests for some of the forms that Tony displayed during her presentation. So those forms are in the back, the appendices of the guidance document that's on the download hub and in your webinar panel. And we're going to look at making some of those as fillable forms just to make it a little easier to use those. But those are all included right now in the back end PDF form. We have a listener asking, could the forms be filled out via a telephone call? I'm guessing in like an interview format. What are your thoughts?
Yes.
Great.
I think that some of them would be easier just for the parent to do online, like checking what items they have in the home. But I definitely think the family history form could be done in an interview. Actually, all three of the preliminary forms, not the new forms, but the preliminary forms could be done in an interview format.
Okay. What type of consent form do you recommend that parents fill out for the video conference, this format?
Well, I think every school district and every program has their own, but I do believe that you will need to add a permission to video section to that permission to assess, so that piece is covered as well. You do need to have permission to video.
Mm-hmm. And there is some more information about that in that guidance document that's provided.
We also in that guidance document, there's a link to the new guidelines coming out of HIPAA in relationship to COVID.
Here's another question about how do you ensure the positioning of the webcam if you're following the child's lead?
We also included, well, we didn't put links, but there are many, many links on when you Google different kinds of homemade stands for phones and for iPads. So what we have suggested is that you have the family make a little holder for the phone or the iPad so that that can easily be moved. If you have an infant, they're probably not going to be moving that around that much. But that is one thing, if there are two adults in the home, that one person can kind of aim as the child moves. Otherwise, it is going to require the parent to readjust the direction of the camera. But it's important that they have something that holds that camera so they don't have to hold it. That's going to be a mess. The camera's going to be all over the place. And there's a variety of them that you can make with a paper clip. There's another one you can make with a paper towel tube. There's just a variety of them on Google. So I would suggest that what you may want to do as a team is to either connect them to those sites or send out some directions to them about how to do it, because you can do it with the household materials they have in the home.
Great, thank you. And just one comment from a listener that Zoom does have a feature for interpreters. So if you're using Zoom, so thank you for that comment.
Yes, thank you.
We have a question. How do you recommend gathering relevant information if the family's going through a crisis? So information about shelter, food, and unemployment, to evaluate how those needs are separate from the child's developmental needs. Do you have a form or a method for collecting that information?
It's not part of the play-based assessment, but there are several forms out there that look at parent resources and what their needs might be. I would suggest that you might want to look into that. I know that several of the family-focused programs do have some of those forms, and you could easily add one of those forms to the preliminary forms and then help the parent identify some resources that might be helpful for their family. But it's not included in ours, but you can add it.
Okay, thank you. We have a question asking whether or not any of the online video conferencing systems allow you to record. So I'll say yes. Many, I think most of them all let you record.
And that's actually a really nice feature, because sometimes you want to go back and look at something. You're not sure what the child said, or you're not sure what the interaction was, or something like that. So I think that really is a nice feature to have and be able to go back and talk about something that happened as a team.
Mm-hmm. We have one question. Sounds like someone who's done a little bit of some video conferencing with parents so far, and said, on our experience, sometimes parents have let the children run into other rooms, which makes it difficult because they're not in the viewing area anymore. Do you have any recommendations for keeping everyone in this camera sightlines?
Well, I think you can move. I think you can move outdoors and move into another room, but you have to take the camera with you. I think if you can keep them kind of located in a play area in the living room or in the kitchen or something like that, that might be more time efficient than trying to move around with the child. And there may be ways that you can have the parent set it up ahead of time so that they have some chairs blocking a doorway or something like that. But I don't think there's really any problem with moving from room to room as long as somebody can move the camera with the child.
Okay, thank you. We have a follow-up to the question about the environmental needs, or the needs that relate to the current environment. The listener said the question was really about how do you assess social and emotional needs that are related to the time of crisis as opposed to the developmental needs. So ones, I guess, that are more temporary.
That I think would be something you would have in a conversation with the parent. You may, and we have many times seen children who are in crisis act out those crises in their play, act out their fears and anxieties and temper tantrums and things that kind of indicate what's going on with them emotionally. But I think a lot of that may be through an interview, and particularly when you're talking about the routines rating form, that would be a good one. If you feel this family is going going under a great deal of stress, to talk to the family about what is happening with this child. What are the sleep patterns like? What are the eating patterns like? When are temper tantrums occurring? Or what behavior changes have they seen in the last 2 or 3 weeks that indicate to them that this is a concern? So I think a lot of that is going to come through your dialogue with the family, as opposed to, or in addition to, your direct observations of the child's behavior during the assessment.
Great, thank you. There was a couple questions for more information about TPBA, so I brought up on my screen. This is a page on the Brooks website that's all about TPBA and TPBI. So if you'll jot down that URL, you can go back and find more information about TPBA. There's a whole webinar we have recorded that introduces the tool, so I would recommend, if you're a new user, that you take a listen to that webinar. It's on, there's linked on the website, and it's on YouTube. Let's see. So we'll take just a couple more questions because we're approaching the end. We're having some, there's a couple questions about administering it online with hard to test little ones. So do you have any recommendations specifically for infants?
Actually, I think the infants are easier to do because they're not running all over the place. So my question would be, what do you mean hard to test infants?
Okay. So if you're listening, or if you're still listening, you can type in and I'll watch the chat box just to see, and we'll take a few more questions. We have a listener's asking, so would you do TPBA2 with 17 pre-K students? I'm guessing, individually. And if so, how long would you recommend for each child?
Would you repeat that question?
Sorry, would you recommend doing right now during this situation TPBA with 17 pre-K kids? I think probably it's a teacher of a pre-K class. So I'm assuming individually because they're all at home now.
Yes.
And if so, how long would you spend with each of the 17?
It depends on what you're looking for. If she's looking for a baseline for where they're going to be starting when they come back to school, or is she looking for kids who need to have a further evaluation? So I would look at different things depending on the purpose of what she's looking for. So if she wants to respond to that, maybe I could give her a better answer. But yes, you do want to look at the kids individually. Well, you really don't have any option then to look at them individually. But if you have 17 that you have to do, and again, I would say how long a period of time do you have to do them? What might be helpful is to put together a play set that becomes sort of what you ask parents to put together from things that you think they would have in the home, and do it more in terms of a short-term 15 to 20 minute play set observation. But again, it depends on what you're looking for.
Thank you. We have a follow-up to the question about the hard to test little ones. So by hard to test, this listener was referring to babies or infants with autism spectrum disorders.
I don't really do anything differently with them, except the facilitation may change. When I'm observing children with autism, or I suspect of having autism, I want to see what they do in spontaneous play with no support or no interaction, so to speak. I want to see what they do with different kinds of interactions. So a little bit of facilitation, and then all the way up to structured and reinforcement, so that I can see what kinds of things are effective with the child. Because the play-based assessment is not just to see eligibility, it is also to see what kinds of interventions are going to work with this child. So I would want to maybe do a little more coaching with the parent around how to do those different kinds of facilitation strategies, so you can see the child's different reactions, both with different types of language interactions, as well as different toys and materials and that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. We have a question. So one listener said that they've had parents video their child and share the video with the team. Is that recommended?
Yes. Yes, that's one of the options that we provide. And actually, my favorite of the three options is a combination of the two, so that you have some that are really from the routines in the home and the parent watching. My grandson, my grandson just sent me a videotape, my 2.5-year-old, of running around looking for Easter eggs. And I had an opportunity to see his talking and his movements and whether he remembered where the eggs were and all other kinds of things. So there's, you can see a lot in almost anything. So as long as the parents have captured more than, a couple minutes worth of tape of a certain section, you want to try to put together a variety so you can see gross motor and fine motor, so you can see their play interactions and their language. But a lot of that can happen in the bathtub. It can happen out in the backyard playing. So as long as you have cuts that are going to give you a holistic view of the child, you can do it totally with those. But if you can't get that, you want to supplement that with your online observation, with your recommendations for the kinds of things you haven't had an opportunity to see.
Thank you. We have some good feedback from a listener who sounds like she's done some assessments via video conference. And she says, we've been able to get our most applicable information when a child is playing. We start with a snack where the child's sitting in a high chair or booster seat, and this is a great time to get info by report from the parent and observation, and then they shift into playtime. And she also mentions it's important to do an email or call in advance so the family knows what to expect during the Zoom or FaceTime. So those are
Right.
great tips, and we're glad that it's working
Yeah.
for you.
I agree with that. And I would say that's why we put together the little planning sheet, so parents aren't just hit over the head with, okay, here we are, we're going to video you and your child playing. It helps them to have a little bit of an upfront idea of what you want to see and help them problem solve how you might want to see that. In terms of the snack, I think that's a good idea. We also do snack last because it's a nice way to end the session and also get to see some of those self-help skills.
Great. So we'll take just a couple more questions. So this listener works in a school district where the majority of the school district have access to technology, but there are some families who don't. And so they are in a position to try to help them access it. But what do you do when it's just not possible for the family to have video technology?
They don't have phones?
Um, I think they might have phones. Well, they said technology, so I'm thinking that means computers, or so maybe not phones that are internet access, maybe just older cell phones, perhaps. So if they don't have video
Yeah,
capabilities,
you can use FaceTime if you have a phone. You can do some of the FaceTime. It's not the best, but it will give you some idea. But I think for some of those, we are going to have to say we can't act. I mean, we can't do it.
right? And probably the same thing. We have another listener who's saying that if a parent just does not want to participate in a video conference or doesn't want to record their child, what would you recommend? Just waiting?
I don't have a solution to that other than to try to alleviate their anxiety. I think a lot of the anxiety that parents have is that we're going to be judging them as a parent, and that while we're watching the child, we're actually also watching them. And so I think some of that has to do with alleviating their anxiety and indicating that that we can see the best the child can do in their interactions with their parent, with somebody they know and love versus a stranger, and that actually this approach may give us better information than interaction with a stranger. So I think sometimes it's how you communicate to the parent what you want to do and why you want to do it, so that they don't feel intimidated and threatened.
Okay. And then we'll take one last question. This listener is interested in if you could talk a little more about assessing children with motor concerns during
Yeah,
videos.
with kids who are more severely involved, you may have to become more directive in terms of your coaching with the parent. So for instance, if you want to see how the child does on their tummy and prop and whether they can prop on their arms, if you have a child who's nonverbal and maybe is quadriplegic and you want to see what the child can do, you might help the parent do some play with the child to see if the child can use eye pointing to look at what they want to play with, or to sequence what they want the parent to play with. So I think that with kids who are more severely involved, where our coaching role becomes a little bit different, because we're really trying to look at what does the child know and what are the supports we have to give in order to find out what the child knows and what they can do.
Great. Okay, one last question, because I think this is a good question. So what do you do if a child has a meltdown or the parents are just really becoming frustrated? Is it okay to stop?
Well, sometimes we elicit meltdowns, because if that's something the parent has concerns about, then that's what we want to see. We want to see what that looks like, what initiated it, how long does it take for the child to calm, can they self-calm, does the parent have to do something? So if it goes on and on, obviously we would try to help the parent. I would see, first of all, what does the parent do? How did they try to calm the child? Does that work or not work? If it doesn't work, you might offer a suggestion to the parent. I wonder what would happen if you tried this. And if it goes on for too long, then I would say, it seems to me like this is a good time to stop. And if we need more information, we'll schedule another time that's a better time for you and a better time for your child.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all your questions. If we didn't get a chance to answer them, or I missed them during the call, we'll try to follow up with some answers afterwards.
I hope it was
Thank you.
helpful.
Yes. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much, Tony, for participating. I know all of this information is really helpful, and please, listeners, if you have any trouble accessing those forms on the Brooks website, please feel free to reach out. My contact information or an email will be in the follow-up email that you'll receive tomorrow, as well as a link to those, the link where you can download those.
Can I add one thing, Amy?
Sure.
My email address is on the information that is sent out. And if anybody, as you're doing this, if you have suggestions, this is a document which is evolving. We will continue to change it and add information as people learn what works and what doesn't work. So if you go to the website and get my email address, I would be very appreciative of any information that you can share that would be helpful to add. We're all in this together.
Great. Let me bring that up. I could do this. So this is on this document, this online guidance document, but I'll scroll down so we can see Tony's, if anyone wants to jot down her email address. So it's
just tony.linder@gmail.com.
Yep. Great. Well, thank you so much, Tony. And thank you so much, listeners. We hope this was helpful, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Good luck.